गोयल प्रेस वार्ता को संबोधित कर रहे हैं।
Shri P. Chidambaram, the then finance minister, is on record to say that he has inherited a very strong economy. At that time, the growth rate was over 8%. Inflation was around 4%, 4.25%. Foreign exchange reserves were robust compared to the size of the economy at that point of time. All fiscal parameters were in control. The macroeconomy was strong. Fiscal deficits were down. Revenue deficits were down. And India was a beacon of hope for the country. If I may quote from his budget speech given to Parliament introducing the budget for the year 2004-05, the then Honorable Finance Minister had said, the economic fundamentals appear strong and the balance of payments is robust. And he had talked going forward about sustaining the then growth, the then production and value addition, and take it forward in the years to come. He had also spoken about his government being committed to strike a fine balance between the three mutually reinforcing objectives of growth, stability, and equity. What did the UPA do in the 10 years that they were in government? Of course, I can ask a question that I have read 10 speeches of the UPA government. Never once has there been a mention of bringing in a legal guarantee for MSP. Never once did they speak about trying to uplift the poor by giving them free homes, giving them free insurance, giving them free food grains, or ensuring that every household has access to electricity, has access to cooking gas, LPG cylinders, has access to clean drinking water, has access to digital connectivity, has access to toilets. And in 10 years of the UPA government, they brought the nation down to a growth rate of about 4.4% that was inherited by Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi. Inflation at spiraling highs for the last few years of the UPA government. In UPA 2, in some years inflation was in double digits. Core food inflation had gone up to over 13%. And they left behind for Prime Minister Modi, instead of a strong economy, which the UPA inherited in 2004, a fragile economy, which the world looked down upon as a fragile five economy, one of the weakest economies in the world, with very, very weak macroeconomic fundamentals. In 2014, Mr. Chidambaram, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, Srimati Sonia Gandhi ji, the then chairperson of the UPA, who was micromanaging the affairs of government through the back door, left behind for the country high fiscal deficits, high inflation, high interest rates, low growth, very low foreign exchange reserves. Some of the reserves were propped up by artificially borrowing non-resident FCNRB loans at exorbitant interest rates just to temporarily shore up foreign exchange. In every respect, the 10 years of the UPA were a failed experiment, reflected a failed government, reflected a failed governance model, and brought the country and the people of the country to their knees in terms of quality of life, in terms of equity, which he spoke about, in terms of inclusive growth, in terms of ensuring the welfare of the farmers, the welfare of the poor, a better future for the MSMEs. And we saw crony capitalism at its worst, with corruption scandals surfacing regularly during their period, and not small corruption scandals. At that point of time, to have a Colgate of 1,86,000 crores, where the Congress party gave irregular allotments to their cronies, business friends, of coal mines, valuable national resources, free of charge, without any due process. And the Supreme Court had to cancel over 190 coal blocks in September 2014, clearly putting the mark of approval on the irregular and corrupt practices of the Congress party. One after another, corruption scandals tumbled out of the UPA regime. And when we came to 2014, Mr. Chidambaram, again finance minister, was trying to justify the failure of their government by talking about world economic growth being low, falling, the global risks mapped by international agencies, acknowledging the failure of his government in achieving fiscal consolidation, price stability, self-sufficiency in food, or reviving the growth cycle, by justifying it on global factors. When speaking about the state of economy, and I quote from his speech, he says in para 6, "Let me begin with the good news. The fiscal deficit for 13-14 will be contained at 4.6% of GDP. I'm quoting from his speech. The UPA had taken fiscal deficit right up to 9.1%. And the good news was it is down to 4.6% after nearly 5 years. More importantly, he's talking of current account deficit being contained a little bit and adding 15 billion to foreign currency reserves in that year. Only 15 billion US dollars as good news. At that time, there was talk of a downgrade of the Indian economy. And he says, and I quote again, "Analysts and rating agencies had acknowledged our efforts some months ago and no longer speak about a downgrade." So clearly, the atmosphere was one of depression, despondency and despair under the UPA government, and international agencies were talking about a downgrade. He was hoping that domestic experts will agree with the UPA government what it said when it put fiscal stability at the top of the agenda. This is a quote from his speech, that fiscal stability should be at the top of the agenda. And then he says, and very interestingly, I quote, "Going forward, I appeal to all political parties to join me in the pledge that we shall not," and then he repeats for emphasis, "we shall never do anything that will affect the stability of the foundations of India's economy." This is Mr. Chidambaram's speech of 2014-15, which I have quoted from. And look at what has happened in 10 years. The country has moved from a fragile 5 economy left behind by Mr. Chidambaram to a top 5 economy in the world, from the 10th position to the 5th position in the world rankings of GDP. In UPA's regime, I suspect they remained flat. They inherited the 10th or 11th position. They're left behind the 10th position. We improved from the 10th position in the world to the 5th. And in the next 3.5 years, Prime Minister Modi will take this country to the 3rd position in world GDP rankings. In the 10 years that we were in government, we have strengthened the macroeconomic fundamentals so much that the world today is looking up to India as a beacon of hope, as the country that will lead economic growth of the world, contribute the very large share to world economic growth. A country that for the last 3 years has demonstrated over 8% average growth. A country with boasts of $657 billion as foreign exchange reserves. A country that is very rapidly moving to its stated fiscal deficit target of about 3.7 to 4.3%, or at an average about 4%. A country that has taken 25 crore people out of multidimensional poverty in 10 years under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, taking 4 crore families out of poverty by giving them a free home, providing 12 crore families with a free toilet, ensuring the dignity and well-being of the women of our country, of our girl children, provided every home with a LPG gas connection, working to make sure that every home gets a water connection, Nal Se Jal, through the Jal Jeevan mission, which has rapidly ramped up from around 3 crore homes, 3.5 crore homes, to over 14 crore homes already, and in the next 2.5, 3 years, ensuring Nal Se Jal for every family, has taken electricity and digital connectivity to the remotest corners of the country, with every home today having electricity. And